right. You didn't, it's okay. No judgment, okay? But tonight, we're going to look at a story in the Old Testament. We're going to look at a story that's in 1 Samuel. So I'm going to give you a little background because I don't know about you, but I was talking to somebody else about this, and they're like, there's a Samuel? Like, I think I know the Bible. I didn't know there was even an area named Samuel. Yeah, there are. And it's 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what's been going on in Samuel up to this point, and then we'll dive into the story we're going to talk about, okay? All right, so hang with me here. We're looking at this story, and in Samuel, so Samuel is a prophet. And a prophet is someone in these times who connected the people to God. So in this story, we're going to see, especially up to this story, Samuel is trying to find a king because the people need a king. So he's like, okay, God, who should be king? And God tells him Saul. So he picks Saul as king, and it even says that God gave Saul a new heart to be king. Okay, so Saul's king, things are going great. Well, Saul kind of starts making some interesting choices. You know, the interesting thing for me is I was thinking about, okay, what would I do if I was king, right? Because position plus power for Saul started kind of being prideful. He kind of started acting out of fear. He started making choices that really were revealing to what was really going on in his heart. God would say, hey, to Samuel, do this one thing, tell Saul. And Saul would be like, okay, I'm going to do my other thing over here. And it was story after story of disobedience. And God was like, oh my gosh, Saul, I chose you as king. But this is the cool thing about God. Just because God had chosen Saul to be king doesn't mean that God can control Saul's choices. Because the thing about God is that he gives us the freedom to make our own choices. So Saul had the choices to disobey or obey, and he chose disobedience. Now, position plus power was revealing this selfishness, this pride, this insecurity that was in Saul's heart. I was thinking if I was king, okay, king, not queen, if I was king, I would be a little prideful. You know, the thought that I was thinking, that position plus power, I was like, man, what would that reveal about me if I was asked to be king? And I got this image of Katy Perry in the Dark Horse video. You guys know what I'm talking about? She's sitting in that huge throne. I'm like, zapping people? I don't know. Okay, so I was like, that's probably where I would be. And it made me think about, what do our choices reveal about what's in our heart? Right? Because I made choices in the new year. Saul's making choices. And these choices are against the things God's telling him. And it's showing these things in his heart. So up to this point, Saul's not really doing what he's supposed to. So God says, all right, I need to pick a new king. Samuel, come on. We got to get a new guy. And in fact, God says, I am picking someone who is a man after my own heart. So unlike Saul, whose heart was revealing that he's got some insecurity and fear and pride going on in there, God wanted to put a king in place that was after God's heart. That his choices were motivated by what God would want. And the craziest part about this, you guys, is that God is telling Samuel to go anoint somebody else as king while Saul is still king. That's pretty crazy. So that's the story we're going to look at tonight. We're going to look at a story of Samuel actually going to try to find this guy and what happens in the process. All right? So let's put the passage up. You guys can read it with me. Not out loud, just quietly in your minds. All right. I'm not going to do voices or anything, but I'm going to make this dramatic reading. Okay, so now the Lord said to Samuel, you have mourned long enough for Saul. Why did he mourn? Well, because Saul wasn't living up to Samuel's hopes as a king. That Saul made choices that showed that he had some selfishness in his heart. Right? Okay, so he says, I rejected him as king of Israel, so fill your flask with olive oil and go to Bethlehem. Find a man named Jesse who lives there, for I have selected one of his sons to be my king. So one of his sons is the guy that's after God's own heart, right? But Samuel asked, how can I do that? If Saul hears about it, he'll kill me, because he's still king. Don't make me go. Take a heifer with you, because that's the answer to all the problems. The Lord replies, and a heifer's a cow. I was like, what's happening here? I was reading it to my husband. He's like, that's a cow. I'm like, I know. And say that you have come Invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show you which of his sons to anoint for me. Oh yeah, and anoint means choose. That's a fancy way of saying choose as king, okay? So Samuel did as the Lord instructed, and when he arrived at Bethlehem, the elders of the town came trembling to meet him. What's wrong? They asked. Do you come in peace? Well, if Samuel's the voice of God, he connects people to God, they might be scared. Like, why is he here? Oh no, what did we do? Yes, Samuel replies, I've come to sacrifice to the Lord. So purify yourselves and come with me to the sacrifice. And then Samuel performed the purification rite for Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice too. This is a lot of cultural references, okay? You're like, purification and rituals, what's happening? So we won't get into all of that, but sacrifices, I like to think they're like a party, okay? So there's a lot going on here, but just imagine a party is happening. And there's a holy element to it. So when they arrived, Samuel took one look at Eliab and thought, surely this is the Lord's anointed one. So Eliab's probably tall, right? He looks like a leader. But the Lord said to Samuel, don't judge by his appearance or height, for I have rejected him. The Lord doesn't see things the way you see them. People judge by the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Then Jesse told his son, Abinadab, to step forward and walk in front of Samuel. But Samuel said, this is not the one the Lord has chosen. Next, right? So then Jesse summoned Shimea. That's probably how you say his name, Shemaiah. But Samuel said, neither is that one. Sorry, Shemaiah, you're out of here. He's not the Lord's chosen. So in the same way, all 7 of Jesse's sons were presented to Samuel. And none of them were the one that he was to choose, that God wanted to choose as king. But Samuel says to Jesse, the Lord has not chosen any of these. So Samuel asked, are these all the sons you have? They're still the youngest, Jesse replied, but he's out in the field somewhere watching the sheep and goats. Probably not number 1 choice for the king of Israel. The boy, the kid that's like wandering with the sheep and goats. I don't know about that. Send for him at once, Samuel says. We will not sit down to eat until he arrives. So Jesse sent for him. He was dark and handsome with beautiful eyes. And the Lord said, this is the one, anoint him. So as David stood there among his brothers, Samuel took the flask of olive oil he had brought and anointed David with oil. And the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David from that day on. And then Samuel returned to Ramah. Okay, what is happening here? So Cliff Notes version. Because you might be like, I don't know what's happening there. So, Samuel's going to go follow what God's telling him to find the new king, right? Choose the new king. What does Samuel do? He's looking at the guys come out, and he's like, oh, Eliab. Okay, he's tall. You know, he's pretty buff. He'd probably be an awesome leader. And what does God say immediately? Not only does he say no, he's like, by the way, he says something intense. He says, the Lord says, don't judge by his appearance or height, for I rejected him. Oh no, I've totally rejected him in this position. Because the Lord doesn't see the way the Lord doesn't see things the way you see them. That's a tongue twister. And people judge by outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Man, you could have just said no. I don't know. Like, geez, that feels like there's a lot going on. Okay, so God's like, yeah, that's not him, and you need to stop saying who you think should be leader and what they look like. And then David comes around, who is a shepherd boy, and I'm pretty sure that's not who you think is going to be this king that you want to have over all of Israel. And he's like, this is the one. So Samuel's like, okay, guess that's it. So I'm going to spend the rest of the night on this verse. Let's go to the next slide. The verse that I just tried to read. I want to spend time on that verse. Because that verse struck something in me. And I've been chewing on it all week. So people judge by the outward appearance. Okay, would you guys agree with that statement? Or no? I think even outward appearance is just assuming that means like the way we look. I think it's also the image we have, the car we drive, the job we want to someday have, the relationships we have. I don't know, I work with Greeks, right? The sorority or fraternity that you're in, the clubs, the organizations. You have good grades in class. I don't know, whatever you put out to the world, right? The external expression of who you are. I think that's the outward appearance. Would you say people judge by the outward appearance? Yeah. You know what's funny? I think when you ask that question, people are like, oh yeah, I totally know those judgy types. You know, I judge everybody else. No, we all judge by the outward appearance. Let's be real. And I'm not even trying to say even mean all the time, but you're like, oh, that guy could probably play football, he's huge. You know, you're like observant. And And we all do that. But I think what I was realizing, it's not just the things that we do, it's like our choices even define our outward appearance. That the major you choose says something about you.